There is a certain kind of person who spends most of their life trying to understand people. They watch carefully, listen closely, and notice things others seem to miss. They can read a room within seconds. They sense tension before anyone speaks about it. They notice when a smile is forced or when someone's tone carries irritation beneath polite words. Over time, this ability becomes automatic. It feels less like a skill and more like a constant background process in the mind. Yet the strange thing is that the more you understand people, the harder it can become to trust them. This is not because you believe everyone is bad. It is because you start recognizing how complex and contradictory human behavior really is. You see how easily people hide insecurity behind confidence, how often kindness appears when it's convenient, but disappears when effort is required. When you begin noticing these patterns, trust stops being simple. For many people, social life is driven by optimism. They assume others mean well until something proves otherwise. But if you are highly observant, your mind works differently. You are constantly comparing word with actions, tone with intention, promises with behavior. When these elements don't match, you notice immediately. And once you notice enough inconsistencies, it becomes difficult to return to the comfortable assumption that everyone is straightforward. Another reason understanding people can make trust harder is because awareness reveals motives. Human behavior is rarely random. Behind most actions, there is some form of desire, approval, status, safety, validation, attention, control. When you begin recognizing these motivations, conversations change meaning. Compliments sometimes sound strategic. Apologies sometimes sound offensive. Enthusiasm sometimes feels performative. None of this means people are malicious. It simply means people are complex. But complexity erodes the illusion that relationships are always pure and simple. Many perceptive individuals experience a moment in adulthood when they realize how much of social interaction is performance. People adjust their tone depending on who is listening. They emphasize certain parts of their personality while hiding others. They laugh when something isn't actually funny. They agree when they secretly disagree. This social flexibility is normal. It keeps environments smooth and predictable. But once you start seeing it clearly, it can make conversations feel less authentic. You might find yourself wondering what someone really thinks rather than what they are saying. Over time, this creates distance. Not visible distance, but psychological distance. You still talk, still listen, still participate in social life. But part of your mind remains slightly detached, analyzing rather than simply experiencing. This analytical mode is powerful in many situations. It allows you to detect manipulation, read emotional cues, and understand hidden dynamics within groups. But it also means your brain rarely relaxes in social environments. While others interact intuitively, you are processing layers of information, and processing always requires energy. This is why people who understand others deeply often feel drained after long conversations. It isn't the talking itself that is exhausting. It is the constant interpretation happening beneath the surface. There is also a paradox in human perception. The more accurately you understand others, the more you realize how difficult it is to fully know anyone. Every person contains contradictions. Someone can be generous and selfish at the same time, loyal in one situation, but unreliable in another, honest in certain conversations, and defensive in others. Recognizing this complexity prevents you from idealizing people, but it can also prevent you from feeling completely secure in relationships. Many perceptive individuals therefore develop cautious trust. They don't reject people. They simply wait longer before believing fully. They watch how someone behaves when they are stressed, disappointed, or challenged, because those moments reveal more about character than polite conversations ever will. Interestingly, people who understand others deeply are often misunderstood themselves. Because they are observant and reflective, they may speak less. They may pause before responding. They may choose their words carefully. Others sometimes interpret this as distance or judgment, when in reality it is simply thoughtfulness. The mind that sees many layers cannot respond instantly to every situation. It needs time to organize what it perceives. Another hidden cost of understanding people is emotional weight. When you notice subtle sadness behind someone's jokes or insecurity behind someone's arrogance, it becomes harder to react casually. You become aware that many behaviors come from pain rather than intention. That awareness can increase empathy, but it can also increase emotional fatigue. You carry knowledge others do not notice. And sometimes you wish you could switch that awareness off, even for a moment, because seeing clearly means you rarely experience the simplicity that others seem to enjoy. Yet despite these challenges, understanding people is not a burden by nature. It becomes heavy only when it is combined with isolation. When perceptive individuals feel alone in their observations, they may begin questioning whether their interpretations are accurate. They may wonder if they are overthinking or imagining patterns that do not exist. But in many cases, their perception is simply sharper than average. The world appears more complex to them because they are seeing more of it. As time passes, people who understand others deeply often reach an important realization. Awareness alone does not have to create distance. It can also create compassion. When you recognize the insecurities driving certain behaviors, it becomes easier to respond calmly instead of reacting emotionally. You stop taking everything personally. You begin understanding that someone's frustration may come from stress rather than hostility. Someone's criticism may come from insecurity rather than superiority. This shift transforms perception into emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not simply the ability to read others. It is the ability to interpret those signals without becoming overwhelmed by them. Many perceptive people initially struggle with this balance because they see so much. They try to process everything. They replay conversations, analyze expressions, and revisit past interactions, searching for meaning. While this analysis can produce insight, it can also trap the mind in endless interpretation. Eventually, however, experience teaches an important lesson. Not every behavior requires explanation. Some actions are temporary reactions rather than reflections of character. Learning to recognize this distinction protects mental energy. Instead of examining every detail, emotionally intelligent individuals learn to focus on patterns over time. A single conversation may be misleading, but repeated patterns reveal reliable information about a person's values and habits. This approach allows perceptive individuals to keep their awareness without drowning in it. They observe, but they also allow uncertainty to exist. Another powerful realization emerges from this process. Understanding people does not mean controlling them. Many thoughtful individuals spend years trying to predict how others will react in order to avoid conflict. They analyze tone, anticipate responses, and adjust their behavior to maintain harmony. While this strategy can reduce tension, it also creates emotional responsibility for things outside their control. Eventually, they learn that relationships cannot be managed entirely through awareness. Every person carries their own history, fears, and expectations. No amount of observation can fully prevent misunderstanding. Accepting this reality can feel uncomfortable at first, but it also creates freedom. When you stop trying to predict every reaction, conversations become more natural. You speak more honestly. You allow others to interpret your words without constant adjustment. This honesty often improves relationships rather than damaging them, because people tend to trust those who communicate clearly rather than those who appear endlessly cautious. Another transformation occurs when perceptive individuals begin recognizing their own patterns with the same clarity they apply to others. Self-awareness becomes just as important as social awareness. They notice when their mind moves into analysis mode automatically. They notice when they assume hidden motives without sufficient evidence. This reflection prevents perception from turning into suspicion. Understanding others should expand empathy, not reduce it. Over time, people who balance awareness with openness develop a unique social presence. They are calm observers, but not distant ones. They listen deeply, but they also speak sincerely. Others often feel understood around them, even if they cannot explain why, because a perceptive mind learns to translate observation into kindness rather than judgment. Perhaps the most important lesson in understanding people is accepting that clarity does not eliminate uncertainty. Even the most observant individual cannot fully know another person's internal world. Every relationship contains some mystery, and that mystery is not a flaw in human connection. It is part of what makes relationships meaningful. If every intention were visible and every motive obvious, interaction would become mechanical rather than emotional. Trust would become calculation rather than choice. In reality, relationships require a balance between awareness and willingness. Awareness helps you recognize patterns and protect yourself from harmful dynamics. Willingness allows you to remain open to new experiences rather than withdrawing completely. When these two elements exist together, perception becomes a strength rather than a barrier. You understand people without losing your ability to connect with them. You recognize complexity without assuming the worst. And instead of feeling isolated by your awareness, you begin using it to build deeper and more authentic relationships.